everybody. This is Baron Hoig with OneChiroporactic again with Dr. Richard Barwell. Continuing our sessions on neurologically based chiropractic. And in our last session, we were talking really about the art and the philosophy of chiropractic and really where some of the inconsistencies lie within those. And Doc, we were finishing up last time really talking about the philosophy. And part of the philosophy is this idea of universal intelligence or the innate. So kind of explain to me, where does that fit into this equation when we're looking at universal intelligence?
This all sort of reflects back onto that concept of vitalism too, because we're talking about energies. And, the minute you start dealing with energy, you start dealing in a world that we don't fully understand. There's so many things now that are starting to become aware. For instance, we're starting now in EEG work to look at areas called gamma and high gamma and hyper gamma, where we're just starting to understand that these things even exist and what happens in the brain in those areas. And it starts to answer a lot of the questions that have appeared to be sort of voodoo stuff before, and especially when it comes to things like network spinal analysis. And I keep picking on that because a lot of people don't understand what's going on there. They don't understand what's happening with things like activator. Oh, that's not going to do anything with that activator thing, but it does, because there is an energy that's involved. So I'd like to get into a sort of a new look at universal intelligence and innate intelligence and the relationship with this to chiropractic. So universal intelligence, this is part of one of our principles. It says universal intelligence is in all matter and continually gives to it all its properties and actions. Well, if that isn't quantum physics in explanation, I don't know what is. I mean, that's the definition of quantum physics that opened up at the turn of 2 centuries ago. That's when it was first explored. And we're still looking at it today. And that's what that collider is looking at now, is that kind of information. So here's what we need to understand, though, about this matter business. And it's we sort of read this and go like, okay, I don't know what an atom gives it properties. Yeah, but the problem is this. Matter is in a cycle of constant change. It goes from order to disorder to order to disorder. If you've ever studied fractals, you know that fractals show us a breakdown to begin with, but within that breakdown, there is an order. Mm-hmm. So it goes from order to disorder to a different order to a different order to a different order. And this sequential ordering of events explains why evolution is the process. If you want to pop down here, the true meaning of evolution is not the evolution of one life form on Earth to another, but it's the evolution of the expression of intelligence. And that's, to me, very, very important, because as intelligence becomes more organized, as the direct relationship between the organization of that energy, you start to get more intelligence. For instance, an atom, when you organize an atom, you've got a piece of matter. You change that organization, you've got a different piece of matter. You start putting the atoms together into molecules, and you have different matter. And you start to see the relationship. And what happens is the more organization that there is, the more of an intelligence is expressed. Now, the intelligence isn't necessarily I'm smarter than you are. The intelligence is I'm more organized than you are. And with that organization comes our ability to exist as something of substance, of matter.
So let's take something very simple and make sure that I understand what you're saying. This is you taking me out to a baseball field. I've never played the game before, ever. And you slowly start introducing the rules of the game. And the more I play it, the more I understand the rules of the game, and the better I become at that game. And then not only do I understand everything you've taught me, but as I continue to play it and I use the unique skill sets that I have and the unique attributes that I have, I might actually expand that game, because my intelligence and the way that I use that intelligence has now broadened the spectrum of the game as the way we knew it from before. Right? Introduction of the black athlete, or introduction of, some of the things. So I wanted to give that analogy so people understood that this happens every day, all day. But what happens when you start breaking it down to the microscopic level of what we do in chiropractic, and when it results to the adjustment, and how that actually starts to change the intelligence of the brain and the human body, right? That's kind of where we're headed.
Very good. Excellent analogy. And that's the thing you've got to sort of wrap your hand around is where do we fit into this expression of intelligence, and how do we improve the organization of the energy, which creates higher levels of intelligence? Let's go to the next slide. I love these. To me, I studied all this stuff when I was at chiropractic college, and it always sort of left me like wanting, because I could memorize the words, but I didn't have an attachment between them all. And so life contains an innate or an inborn intelligence. And for those that want to ever deny that, I don't understand how they can ignore what goes on in life. I lived in Canada, and every fall the geese went south. And every spring the geese came back. Every summer or every fall, the salmon came back to where they were 2 to 3 years before, and knew exactly where that was.
Yeah.
And so that's that inborn intelligence that we have. But it's going to get better than that. And it's this force that's responsible for the organization, maintenance, and healing of the body. Whereas universal intelligence, because it's going from one form to another in a constant state of rearrangements, is destructive in nature. Innate intelligence is constructive in nature. It's the adaptive power for survival in a hostile universal world.
Okay.
And that's where those two things really come in play with one another. And it's expressed through the nervous system. I didn't say that. Dee Dee said that.
Yeah.
These guys were so far ahead of their time in their thinking. They were critical thinkers, and we've lost some of that today with all the electronic stuff doing our thinking for us. We've lost that ability to be critical thinkers and come up with this. I read Dee Dee saying innate intelligence is expressed in the nervous system. Duh.
Yeah.
So let's make sure the nervous system is working right. And that allows us then to adapt to a hostile world. Edward Hubbard, a friend of B.J. Palmer's, was having dinner with them one night. And Edward Hubbard is an American philosopher. And he said, what are the two most important words in the English language? Not very often you catch B.J. flat-footed, but he caught him absolutely flat-footed. He didn't know quite what to say. And Hubbard suggested, I think that they are survival value. And for us to stay alive in a hostile environment that's trying to kill us every second of the day, because we have to adapt to it, whether it's walking from an air-conditioned place to a hot, muggy outside, or vice versa, or eating foods that's not good for us, or living in an area with other stressors such as toxins or traumas or bad thoughts. Those are all negative factors that our nervous system has to contend with and adapt constructively so that we can survive in this hostile environment.
Yeah, which is so true, right? You look at that now, it's just amazing when you dig down to this stuff. My mind's just exploding with just like, oh, well, that explains that and that explains that. But, even our human core nature, right, is to survive, right? Survival of the fittest. You look at all of that stuff. But that even goes to the finite level of the brain, right? The brain's job is to stay alive.
Yep.
Right. And so when we look at that, and then you take universal intelligence, which is the order and the constant evolution of taking new intelligence and reordering, and then you put the innate on that, meaning, but I'm going to survive through this process and make sure that, what I care about, which is my survival, is priority. That's where you get this disease, right? That's where you get this overwhelming, I'm getting a little ahead of us. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but that's where we get into that survival mode, or we're stuck in beta because our body's constantly thinking that it's under attack. And yeah, it's unbelievable to me when you start digging into this stuff that it's so simple, but yet so complex, because we've got to let go of all the things that we've started to hold true for our own understanding.
And we tend to make it far too complex.
Yeah.
Can we go to the next slide? Because
absolutely.
This was a fun one. And I got to give credit to somebody on this one. Joe Strauss, good old Dr. Joe Strauss. He's pretty much a traditionalist. And I stood and I listened to him give this talk, and he was talking about innate. And this was at the same time that I gave my presentation at Sherman College years ago, 2004 or 5. And he stood up and talked about it. He says, hey, there is a cellular innate, there's an organ innate, there's a system innate. And I about fell off my chair going like, of course there is. I never thought about it that way. Innate was just like, one big expression. And when I started thinking about this, and I always want to give Dr. Strauss credit for this, because we need to share credit on these things, you know?
I agree.
We aren't alone in this world. These things that I'm talking about came from my background and my influence by my peers and my mentors along the way that made me stop and think.
That's right.
So we have all the way down to the cell level. We have a cell that knows what it's supposed to do. A liver cell knows what it's supposed to do as a liver cell. It isn't a kidney cell. And if you put a liver cell into the kidney, it looks around the neighborhood and it says, I don't live here. I don't know what these guys are doing. They speak a different language. I can't live here. And it won't exist. It has to be back in its neighborhood because it's got that inborn intelligence to say, this is who I am and what I do. And I do it to the best of my ability. And then that whole organ has to have all the cells in that organ functioning as a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And then they have to work within the systems. We're a closed loop system. The human body is a closed loop. All these various systems in it have to work in balance with one another for us to obtain optimum health. And it all is based on the innate expression all the way down to the cell, to the organ, to the system. So the innate expression is affected by the limitations of matter. You know, chiropractors think that if you give somebody perfect chiropractic care, they will live indefinitely. I got to tell you, that ain't necessarily the case. Right. It probably will survive a lot better. You know, I'm at that stage in my life where I'm losing my friends. Guys that I grew up with, went to high school with, they're all dying off. And here I am still going along, and they keep saying, what are you doing that's different? And the only answer I have for them is chiropractic, because I don't take medicines. Right. It's just chiropractic is the only difference that there is.
And not to take anything away from chiropractic, but to stay congruent with what we're talking about, the only difference is you're making sure that your neural pathway, your nervous system, the neurointegrity is there. That's what you're doing. You're stimulating your brain on a regular basis, causing it to live in a balanced state, a parasympathetic state, which allows it to therefore properly manage the rest of your body, therefore not needing outside interference. Right?
That's the theory until I start dealing with the chiropractic profession.
Yeah, I hear you.
Then my expression is going to lie. Actually, it's not nearly as bad as it was 20 years ago, believe me.
And it's getting better, buddy. I believe it's coming, man. You got a lot more people with big mouths on your side today than I think you've ever had. So we're excited about where it's headed.
Truth is truth, and it will hold. When you put it to the fire, it will hold. You know, and that's part of the problem with the chiropractic profession. What we accepted as truth hasn't held under the fire, and so what do we have? We have a group of the profession that's saying, I can't buy vertebral subluxation and nerve root pressure as a cause of all illness and disease. Right. And they're justifiable in this, but they're saying, so I'm going a different direction. I'm going to medicine. I'm going to do joint work. Instead of going like, wait a minute, we need to look at it differently. Why does it work? And it isn't just strictly moving the bone. That doesn't, you have to ask why the bone was in the wrong place in the first, or wrong spot in the first place. And we'll get to that. That's coming up soon. Yep. But let me just finish with this point.
Oh, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
So the limitations of matter, we got to accept that. That's the physical body. So that's going to time and stressors are going to affect the limitation of that innate expression. But it's all under the control of the central organizing authority. And that comes down to the nervous system. And that comes down within the nervous system to the brain. Yep. The brain is the central organizing authority of everything that goes on in the body. Okay, and it has to have what we call neural integrity. And that's where we're going to pick up next time we come through.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I want to share with you just a little comment about, the importance of this. We started tapping into this and about, people's belief systems and all of that, but we have a real issue right now. And the reason this is so prominent, we're graduating new students from school that have no certainty in what they're doing. They don't have the confidence in adjusting. Back in the day, right, wrong, or indifferent with what they knew, we were graduating people that had total confidence in the adjustment. And they were coming out believing, they didn't know why, but they just said, well, in lack of anything else, I'm going to adjust them. And I'm just going to choose to believe the adjustment's going to do what it's supposed to do. And it did because of their belief system in it. But we're now, because of this whole argument between evidence-based and philosophy, we've created this void of confidence, right? No one knows what to believe, because even the evidence-based people, they haven't really brought anything to the table other than abandon everything that we learned.
Yep.
And so you've got, the idea that, yeah, I want to be evidence-based. I want to have validation for what I'm doing. You have the philosophical people that are still preaching things they can't support. It's created this little vacuum of lack of belief and a lack in confidence of what they're doing. So, we're doing this session for multiple reasons, but one of them is that we gain a confidence again in the adjustment. And we'll talk about this as we go a little bit later. But when you understand the power of a single adjustment, to what it does to the organization of the brain and the neural pathway and the neural, one single adjustment and the power of that adjustment should make you pump your chest every time you deliver one to a patient and be like, bam, we just turned it back on, right? Because when you understand what happens, and this doesn't even have to be a cervical adjustment, this could be a lumbar adjustment, right? Because the divinely controlled body and the way God created those receptors, they're just along the spine. So guys, I want you, when you watch this, to get excited. Don't get defeated. What we're doing is we're giving you confidence in the power of that adjustment. And a win for us on this thing is we have our profession has a revival of loving the technique and having that tripod of the philosophy, the art, and the science, a rejuvenation of just falling back in love with the power of the adjustment, knowing what we're doing to people and communicating that appropriately. Is that accurate, Doc? Wouldn't that be an amazing thing to happen?
This is what brought me to this, and unless I had a direction and an answer for this, I wouldn't have done any of this. But you now will have the power in your practice to be able to hook people up lifetime and do an adjustment, watch it change the brain pattern lifetime. We're dealing with the most powerful thing in the whole world. We're dealing with the power of the expression of the innate at the highest level of the brain, and that's why chiropractic works.
That's awesome, man. I can't thank you guys enough for watching these sessions. Man, again, we're just tipping the iceberg, man. I can't wait for you to get to the nuts. I know you're itching to do it as well, Doc. So we're getting there slow but sure. But hopefully this is going at a pace that you're following and that you're absorbing, and it's making you hungry for more information. And we're going to keep delivering it to you because we've got so much more to share. So thank you again for your time, Dr. Barwell. I appreciate your commitment to this. Thank you, those of you that are watching. We appreciate you trusting OneChiropractic to be able to deliver this information to you, and it's going to keep coming. So we appreciate it. God bless, enjoy, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.